in 1833, and he got to hear the news before he went to be with Jesus. What was so remarkable about those 50 years of investment is the obstacles that he overcame. So let me give you some of those. And some of them you are facing, and some, God willing, you won't have to face. First, the massive financial interests of the opposition. We've heard about that from the other speakers so far. If we unilaterally abolish the trade, Portugal won't, France won't, and they will simply gobble it up, make all the profit, take over all the plantations, benefit from all the finances, and it will become massively injurious to the English economy and to the international stability. A plausible argument for most for 20 years. That's what he was up against. International politics and massive financial investments. Another thing, public criticism and vicious slander. You touch these kinds of things, you will be publicly maligned. Even by your friends, you will be publicly maligned. Age 47, he wins the victory. His public achievement brought him personal moral authority, Pollock says, greater than any other living man. His name in England in 1807 was synonymous with moral and political authority. He was loved and known across the nation as a man who stood for the poor and a man who stood for the disadvantaged at home and elsewhere, and as a triumphant lover of justice. How fickle is public approval. Because before he was done, he took some stands. For example, Queen Caroline had an affair. At least Wilberforce thought she had an affair. And he was very indignant about it and made it a public issue, which put him out of favor with a lot of people. And he was scathingly criticized. And he wrote, July 20, 1820, "What a lesson it is to a man not to set his heart on low popularity when after 40 years of disinterested public service, I am believed by the bulk to be a hypocritical rascal. Oh, what a comfort it is to have to fly for refuge to a God of unchangeable truth and love." The severest criticism he ever got, however, was from a slave-holding William Corbett in 1823. And this just shows you how, when you're laboring in one direction, making some progress, and you've done some things over here, but not as much as you could have done had you done everything over here and not done that, the person who hates what you're doing here, because he owns some of them, will look at the defect over here and make it a plausible indictment to the nation. I mean, this happens over and over again in politics and in churches. Listen to this. This man stands up and publicly says this. I'll read it. "You seem to have a great affection for the fat, lazy, laughing, singing, dancing Negroes. But never have you done one single act in favor of the laborers of this country. Now, he knew that statement was false. If your interests are at stake, you don't have to tell the truth. You just have to make lies sound plausible. You make your appeal in Piccadilly, London, amongst those who are wallowing in luxuries, proceeding from the labor of the people. You should have gone to the gravel pits and made your appeal to the wretched creatures with bits of sacks around their shoulders and with hay bands around their legs. You should have gone to the roadside and made your appeal to the emaciated, half-dead things who are there cracking stones to make the roads as level as a die for the tax eaters to ride on. What an insult it is, and what an unfeeling and what a cold-blooded hypocrite must he be that can send it forth. What an insult to call upon the people under the name of the free British laborers to appeal to them in behalf of black slaves when these free British laborers, these poor, mocked, degraded wretches who would be happy to lick the dishes and the bowls out of which the black slaves have breakfasted, dined, and supped. If you're good enough with words, and you get a fragment of the truth, and you appeal to some deep-seated prejudices, you can ruin a man's life. Wilberforce had seen too much. It didn't faze him. Didn't faze him. I love Wilberforce. He walked away from that, and when somebody asked him about it, he said, he'd never seen below deck. I could document for you all the political schemes that he did for what were called the wage slaves in England. The children, the little children that were hired to climb up the chimneys for the chimney sweeps who were afraid they might get stuck and pull all the soot down over them to make the chimneys clean. I know what Wilberforce did for the children and for the poor. This is a man who in classic form uses a fragment of what was left undone in order to attack what he didn't want done at any cost, because he owned about 1,300 slaves. So let's learn how to take criticism, brothers. There were other obstacles that he had to overcome. All of you who are married and family men know that in the ministry there are many burdens, and you know that if the family is whole, you can stand almost anything. But if the family is broken, if the pain is big there, every other burden is doubled, right? And so when I see what he endured with regard to several things in his family, and then I saw what he had to endure from outside, I admire him all the more. His wife, Barbara, was not like him. One witness said, while he was always cheerful, Barbara was often depressed and pessimistic. She finally worried herself into a very bad health, which lasted the rest of her life. The women who knew her said, 2 of them that I read, said she whined when William was not right beside her. So that's what you get when you court for 2 weeks. Or 2 years and miss it, or not miss it. It's just what's appointed for you. His oldest son, William,